What is up, guys? Welcome to this episode of WuBlockchain podcast. We are dedicated to bring you the most independent insights and research with a specific focus on the Asian crypto market. Today, we have Uger, who is the head of strategy at API3, and our main topic, OEV Network. A ZK rollup aims to capture all Oracle extractable value. How are you doing, Uger?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you, Shane. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for coming. So my first question is, for those of the audience who are familiar with API3, can you give us a quick background of the story of API3 and how the OEV network came to launch?
Yeah, sure. So API3 is an Oracle project founded on the basis of our founders basically running Chainlink nodes beforehand and thinking about ways of make this more efficient, more direct, more verifiable, which sprung to life API3. We can do a lot of things with oracles, but the most common use case that everybody probably knows of is price feeds. That's what everybody wants. That's what everybody needs for DeFi. And one of the core issues with price feeds is that they are basically a money loser. Nobody currently makes any money providing price feeds, and basically everything is heavily subsidized, may that be by the Oracle project selling their own tokens to run feeds, or essentially networks throwing millions at this. Which is why we put a heavy emphasis on actually finding a niche that pays for itself so that an Oracle project can actually be profitable. And that essentially leads us to the OEV network. I guess, yeah, the question is, do you want me to dive into OEV right now or?
Yeah, I mean, OEV is definitely a new word for a lot of people, right? OEV stands for Oracle as extractable value. I just honestly, I just heard it a few weeks ago. Um, so can you just explain it to those of us who don't really understand it, and why is it so important that you guys decided to launch a whole ZK rollup?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, OEV is just a subset of MEV. A lot of you are probably familiar with MEV and how that works. Like the most common example, how you get sandwiched when you want to buy some token on a decentralized exchange. And there are a lot of tools for you right now that have been developed in the last couple of years to actually prevent MEV that happens on your transactions. You can, for instance, use Flashbot's MEV share or something called MEV blocker, where you change your RPC to someone that promises to not extract MEV from you, but they even extract the MEV and give you like 90% of it back. One of the core problems is with oracles is why you need them in the first place. The blockchain does not have access to real-world information. Somebody needs to bring that on-chain, but you cannot do that every block because that is too expensive. So now you're creating essentially this discrepancy between what is available on the blockchain and what is actually happening in the real world. And when you then bring in new information or don't bring in new information, that triggers a lot of things. For instance, when an oracle updates, a user can be liquidated. Now, that Oracle update is pretty valuable if that user can be liquidated with it. But what happens currently is that oracles just update without being aware what they actually enable. Or they essentially don't update despite the fact that an update would essentially allow you, for instance, to liquidate someone. And essentially, OEV is just all MEV related to oracles updating or oracles not updating.
Got it. So to sum it up, right, MEV is more for trading, and OEV is going to be more applicable in the lending market. Is that a
For
correct
instance,
assumption?
yeah, like OEV is just essentially MEV related to everything
Got
oracles.
it.
Lending markets is a pretty good example where an oracle update essentially starts the process of you being able to be liquidated, for instance.
Got it. It's quite an interesting angle, right? If you think about it, because we as DeFi users, we don't think about Oracle too often unless the market plummets, and everybody all of a sudden becomes, yo, how come my position liquidated at such a low price? Um, can you like maybe go deeper into how can that, like, why lenders borrowers get their borrowing position liquidated at such a low price, and how I guess OEV network can prevent that from happening.
I mean, I'm not sure if it can prevent the low price. So essentially, what happens is that there are different Oracle models of how to bring data on chain. The most commonly adapted for lending protocols is what we call a push Oracle. So essentially, because we cannot publish a price every block, we set up certain parameters. For instance, update the on-chain price every 1% movement. So essentially, when the price then nukes, every 1%, a new Oracle update is pushed, a new Oracle update is pushed. And essentially, when that Oracle update is pushed, every time it enables potentially certain things. So essentially, price goes down, the oracles realize it's more than 1%, update the on-chain price, and now a user becomes liquidatable, for instance. A lot of the times what you get then also, like for instance, why you potentially have been liquidated at a worse position, at a worse price, is because you're actually, let's say your liquidation is 999 ETH, for instance, and the last Oracle price is 1000. And if we operate on a 1% deviation, you know that the next update will be 990. So when the price continues nuking further, you won't be liquidated at 999. Your liquidation will actually happen at 990. So you're getting a lot worse execution because how the Oracle functions. And that is also something we want to essentially tackle with the OEV network. Essentially, what we want to create is, instead of an Oracle just pushing data blindly, which most of them do currently, not knowing what it enables, we actually want people to compete for updates. So we at API3, we operate push oracles, something like essentially the current most commonly adopted solutions do. But we essentially also allow people to buy updates and push updates when it is most valuable. So we essentially create a market for Oracle updates where people can bid in order flow auctions for Oracle transactions, update an on-chain price, and essentially take all the rewards that come with it. This could, for instance, be a liquidation. Like if we go back to this example where I said, imagine the on-chain price is 1000 and it continues nuking. The moment on the OEV network where it's going to say it's 999, they don't have to wait for API3 to update at 990. Somebody can just essentially take the price at 999, update on-chain, liquidate the user, and bag all of the profits that come with that, essentially. So the user still liquidated, but at way better rates. And essentially, whatever this liquidating person then pays goes to the protocol. And that is like another big issue that a lot of protocols are facing. Lending protocols in particular, in order to maintain health within the protocol, they pay out liquidation incentives. Like if you have a bad position, they need somebody, and it needs to be open, permissionless, to come in and liquidate a position. And how they do that in most common ways is to give a flat percentage of the collateral of the user. Let's say you get liquidated for $1 million, 5% of that, something between 5 or 10% actually goes to the liquidator. And the reason it's actually a flat percentage is because small positions also need to be incentivized. Like if you have like $100 position, sometimes like $1 is not enough. You need to have like $5, $10 worth of incentive for the liquidator to actually do anything with your position. But then once the position gets larger and larger and larger, you end up paying over hundreds of thousands to somebody just essentially liquidating you. And protocols lose hundreds of millions of this. Like we ran the numbers for Aave across all chains in the last 3 years. Over 2 billion liquidated, over at least 100 million paid out to liquidators. And like that is just insane amounts of money that in effect comes out of the user's pockets due to the lending protocol design, but also due to the Oracle not realizing what it actually enables.
Nice. My next question is, OEV network is a ZK rollup, right? And we definitely hear a lot of buzz around projects slowly announcing their rollup, right? can you probably like share some insights on, what is the role of, building a ZK rollup? Like, what is it that you need from a rollup other than, marketing, marketing buzzwords?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I had the same thought when the idea was first floated. But when you think about MEV and the current concepts out there, it makes a lot of sense. For instance, a lot of these tools that I mentioned earlier for users like you, when you use MEV solutions like Flashbot's MEV Share or MEV Blocker, these are all centrally hosted solutions. This is a server running somewhere, and effectively you're trusting that everything is going to go all right there. But like this is in no way, shape, or form decentralized. There's a lot of trust assumptions being made here. And in the same way, when we sell Oracle updates, our first iteration was actually something very similar, where we essentially had a centralized server somewhere, and they pinged an API, got signed updates, but the problem is we're also charging these people that get updates quite intensive amounts of money. They have collateral that they have to post because, for instance, imagine they win an update and don't update, like we need to penalize them somehow. So there's a lot of money involved in this procedure. And all of that money, the searchers would essentially have to, or like the people liquidating would have to essentially trust us running a server for them to get their money back, which is an insane trust assumption to make. They also have to trust that the auction for Oracle updates that we run is actually legit, because they can't like prove that why did person A win and not person B, because like everything happens on our servers and it's not open. So if you spin this further, what a rollup essentially allows you is, first of all, people can bring money onto there basically trustlessly with the like bridge it over. So people wanting to buy Oracle updates, quote unquote, can move their collateral without API3 being in full control over their money. And most importantly, in my opinion, is there's a direct track record on chain what happened, like who participated in auctions, who was awarded a win. Essentially, did this person then execute the update or were they penalized? So there's like a lot less like there's still like trust assumptions that of course like API3 and the oracles act honestly in the data they provide, but the auction process cannot be as easily gamed because there's a clear track record on chain of what happened. So for to put it simply, less trust in API3 because everything is verifiable, and less trust in API3 when it comes to handling your money because it's secured by a ZK rollup essentially.
Nice. And why did you guys decide to go with Polygon's CDK?
We have a pretty good relationship with Polygon, and we actually believe that ZK is essentially the future. We could have obviously went with I guess roll-up stacks are becoming the next big thing. Optimism has their OP stack, Arbitrum has Orbit, ZK Sync has something now. But quite honestly, we have good relations with Polygon. We serve ZK EVMs. We have a lot of ZDKs that approached us for Oracle services, so we're quite familiar with how they operate. We're quite confident in what to expect out of them, and that's like the main reason we essentially went with it. And there's a lot of roll-up as a service providers that essentially build on top of these solutions, also for others, but Polygon ZDK has like a little bit of an edge in when it comes to bringing this out to market.
Yeah, that makes sense. What is the ongoing role for API3 token within the OEV network?
But additionally, the winning party gets charged 10% on the OEV network, and that 10% essentially goes to API3. So like a lot of people in the MEV world typically say like 90% goes back to you, 10% goes to the MEV service provider. But in our case, you would have to kind of say it's 110%, if that makes sense. Like the bid amount, all of it goes to the DApp, but we charge 10% on top. In effect, mathematically, it's going to end up the same, but it's still worth mentioning. And that 10% is how that is split is API3 as the auction host gets essentially half of it, and the other half is distributed to the Oracle providers. And our half is going to go straight into, like we typically used to say, straight into API3 token buys and burns. It's just straight up a revenue into the token, basically.
So there is going to be a buyback function, like a deflationary kind of nature on API3.
Yeah, it was always in the white paper, and there's different implementations that we thought of. Like one of the current ones that has been developed like last year and is sitting there waiting for this all to launch is that essentially it's a contract that when it's supplied with ETH, it buys API3 with half of it, then LPs on Uniswap, and after a year, it converts everything back to API3 and burns it. So essentially a liquidity buildup
just mechanism. Just like how Maker does it.
Yeah, kind of. But essentially, yeah, solving two problems with one solution.
Cool. I have a techie question from our researcher, so be ready. Can you tell us more about order flow auction and the game theory relationship in it?
Yeah, sure. So essentially, how should I phrase this? When you currently make a transaction and route that through essentially some of these platforms like MEV Share and whatnot, like every one of your transactions creates potentially certain value, and an order flow auction is essentially a mechanism where people are allowed to bid for your flow. Like your transaction is essentially creating something, and people can essentially value that. And this is how essentially somebody like MEV, like Flashbots, can pay you 90% of whatever they extract. You route your order flow through them, and they bundle it with other orders and essentially are able to sell that to other parties, and whatever they get from it is returned to you. For instance, your transaction might cause, let's imagine you have a 100 million ETH sell order, and that might cause certain liquidations somewhere, and now your transaction is like really valuable, and people essentially might bid more for it because it enables a lot of other opportunities, and essentially you get a lot of cash back. I'm not sure if you looked at something like CowSwap. They do this more with intents, where they essentially say you want to sell 1,000 USDC and you want the most USDT you get, and then essentially your intents get sold to the highest bidder. When it comes to essentially the OEV network and order flow auctions, what we sell is not your typical transaction. What we essentially sell is additional Oracle updates. So it's specialized order flow auctions just for Oracle updates. You can bid for additional Oracle order flow, and that money is essentially going then to the dApp. For instance, like I go back to this example where you have a liquidation at 999 and the price is currently 1,000. Imagine when it hits 999, there is a massive liquidation of 10 million. Which essentially at 5% incentive gives you like, damn, my math. How much is that? Yeah, like 50,000. Yeah, 50,000. Not being stupid, right? Yeah.
Is that evidence to over?
Yeah. So essentially, imagine a lending.
Yeah.
Essentially, imagine a lending protocol, and you have a liquidation of like a 10 million, and then like $500,000 of that is effectively incentive paid out by the protocol to the liquidator. And in our case, that would mean that somebody on the OEV network knows that if the price hits 999, I can liquidate this position that is 10 million worth, and the potential profit there is 500,000. So how much do they bid? is then the question, right? Like, how much value can I get back from this? And the interesting thing here is you just have to look at what happens with regular order flow auctions on Ethereum mainnet. If there is a liquidation currently, like Chainlink updates, and then people compete for the liquidation, and if you spin this up on Ethereum mainnet, the same example, 99.9% of the available incentive goes essentially to the auction host, which goes in the typical setup goes to the block builders. So the potential for dApps to recuperate is 99.9%. So instead of paying out $500,000, the dApps will end up paying like mere thousands. Does that make sense? It's a complicated. It's complicated. It's pretty complicated. But essentially, the only thing that you need to know is that an Oracle update sometimes creates massive amounts of value, and you let the market decide what they're willing to pay for that. Because right now there is no market. Right now Oracle's just update, and sometimes this market can recuperate 99% of what you're paying out.
Yeah, and with this tremendous potential amount of value, getting secured by OEV network, it kind of come to the question of different type of data source from if we compare it to Chainlink, which kind of operate with using kind of an aggregation model, right? It's more like hearing from as many people as you can, so you can confirm it's true. And one, API3 and OEV network kind of product, right? I think it's kind of using a first-party data source. Can you tell us why is that?
Sure.
What is the kind of the difference for those of you who don't really understand?
Yeah. First of all, like both methods aggregate. There's no difference essentially that both Oracle projects aggregate. The major difference between a third party and a first party Oracle is that with Chainlink, and again, they also have some first party oracles, but the majority of the network is third party. What that means is, imagine that I'm a Chainlink node operator, and I claim that I get my prices from CoinGecko, and you want my data. So now you get data from me, but I get data from somewhere else. So I'm actually not producing the data in any way. I'm just the person putting it on chain. So what this creates is a lot of additional trust assumptions, because you have to trust CoinGecko, but additionally you have to trust me, and you have to trust that I'm not lying. And in this whole process, there's also a lot of more mouths to be fed, because the data sources have to be paid, the third-party node operators have to be paid, and everybody, in the best-case scenario, also actually has to make money. So what we do with first-party oracles is, instead of essentially me being between the data consumer and CoinGecko, we just make CoinGecko run the oracle. And so you can actually verifiably prove that, hey, my data comes from CoinGecko. And then obviously we not only use CoinGecko, we use like a lot of first-party oracles and aggregate their answers. So you can actually prove that you get data from CoinGecko and multiple other places. And what this in effect just does is, first of all, it creates verifiability. You don't have to trust that I'm telling the truth when I say I get it from CoinGecko, when CoinGecko is running their own oracle. You remove a lot of players that you have to trust additionally in the middle, which reduces cost, because you don't have to pay this additional middle layer, which essentially just means that you can run this a lot more efficiently. You can deploy this more quickly on a lot more networks. You don't have to, like, again, I can just repeat, running base data feeds without all of this MEV stuff is a losing business. So wherever you go, somebody loses money. If it's the Oracle project paying for it, the Oracle project is making a minus in the hopes that their token price goes up. Or you go to the chain and ask the chain for essentially to cover the expenses. And obviously, if your package, due to having less players in it, is like significantly less expensive than somebody that has like 5 times the amount of people involved in the value chain, and you ask for like 1/5 of what they're asking for, it just makes your whole offering more attractive to potential partners.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry. And a follow-up question to that is, since there's going to be a tremendous amount of value being secured by OEV network, um, what if, let's say, there's a scenario where the reward of misbehaving because of such a, let's say, a large loan that's going to be liquidated is more than the service fee that they're earning and the penalty? Uh, is that possible? And what is the the circumstances and the solution to that?
Yeah, obviously, always a possibility. One of the core reasons why we're focusing on first-party oracles is also specifically because there are real businesses behind this.
Right, that's
So if
important.
somebody misbehaves and their answer is essentially on-chain, they can't even essentially lie about that. You see continuous false behavior. You have a real-world entity to go after. And like it's not like they can essentially first of all get away with the money. The second part of that is who is getting used and where is getting used is also managed currently by API3. So we measure all API providers at all given times, and if somebody is not meeting quality standards for a specific feed, they get removed by someone else. Which also essentially ties into if they get removed, they don't make any money out of the OEV network because they are not part of that 10% that we make anymore. And I guess the last and most important part is this applies to every currently implied Oracle solution. Neither Chainlink nor Chronicle nor anyone else functions when all players that are trusted on start to misbehave, because you always trust that the people that operate this for the last 5 years, like Chainlink essentially claims that Chainlink, like that staking will solve this, but at the end of the day, Chainlink Labs still operates who is allowed to be within a certain price feed. In the same way, Chronicle, like MakerDAO's oracles, they rely on industry-known players because it is less likely that all of them misbehave. So all of this is built on the same trust assumption that if you get enough high quality players, the real world ramifications of misbehaving are way too high. And it is true, but also like I get the point. This is not currently the ideal scenario. We have to come to a point where trust gets entirely removed. And this is like more of a shout out from me to the entire Oracle sector. We're guilty of this as well. It's currently all trust based, all of it, without any exception, basically.
Yeah, trust the process. Yes,
Yeah.
trust the process. Um, Now we talked about Chainlink, right? So I want to shift this topic to more of the competition landscape, right? So if you look at the current market share by the total value secured by workloads, Chainlink probably is currently holding 50% of the market share, and Pyth has a very significant influence on Solana and newer blockchains. Um, how does API3 and OEV network going to, I guess, compete with these two? And I guess like what is the end game that you guys are seeing?
Yeah, so essentially, we currently also slightly have an eye on TBS, but it's actually not the core metric we're going by, simply because of what I said in the beginning of of our talk here. TBS doesn't relate to like price go up essentially. TBS has in no way, shape, or form an impact on your actual performance. Um, Simply because there's no recapture mechanism directly into your token. Like running data feeds currently everywhere is a losing business model. So you running data feeds for 5 billion is no different than you running data feeds for 500 million. You still make no money doing what you're doing, which is why essentially we focus so heavily on the OEV network, because this
Mm.
essentially allows us to bring money back to the dApps that they're losing and actually make money. And then essentially TBS actually becomes important and measurable, because the more money you secure, the more potential liquidations you cover, the more potential money you return, the more potential money you actually make without essentially hoping that the amount secured maybe translates to value. Like essentially the OEV networks makes TDS a tangible number, whereas right now it's built up on hopes and dreams that that number is important, which it absolutely is not, because nobody makes money. And that is essentially one of the core measures. Like, we want to focus on the OEV network. And right now, the OEV network only works together with API3 base feeds. So essentially, you read API3 feeds, and the OEV network, you can get additional updates. But we have been in the past weeks also exploring where we can literally just slap the OEV network on top of other oracles, which then essentially releases us from all of the burden of running these data feeds, which are losing business, and just scoop in for the part that actually makes money, which is the OEV stuff. So we're happy if other people secure as much as they want to, as long as we can come in and provide what actually makes money.
Got it. You keep saying like how unsustainable the current Oracle landscape is, especially on Chainlink. So I just want to like maybe dive deeper into like why the rationale behind it, because oracles, I mean, projects do have to pay for the oracles, don't they?
Yeah, no. You in the ideal world, you would assume that that would be the case, but absolutely not. On a lot of layer twos, the foundation behind the layer two is subsidizing all of the feeds. There are multiple governance posts that you can use. Like, what you can typically assume is if you have push oracles like Chainlink, either Chainlink Labs pays for it, which is the case on mainnet mostly, except for very niche tokens. But if you look at something like ETHUSD, that is 100% since 5 years subsidized by Chainlink Labs. If you look at layer twos like Arbitrum, Optimism, whatnot, that is subsidized by the foundation. So the dApps on top of it can essentially utilize price feeds for free. And then if you look at pull oracles like Pyth, they just roll the cost onto the user. Like, if you open a leveraged position on some like perps market, like, that's the advantage of a pull oracle. You can pull the price with you opening the trade, but you actually end up paying. So again, like, this is not like the projects in the rarest of cases pay, except for if they want like a really, really niche feed that they really, really need, and then they pay, like, then they pay. But if you look at the 10 most commonly used feeds like ETH, BTC, stablecoins, none of that in any meaningful way has ever produced money for any Oracle project.
That is something I learned today. I'm sure there must be some of the audience who are new to hear this as well. So how could like what is so Chainlink is not making a lot of revenue that we thought it was. What do you think is going to happen on there? And I mean, do you think they will roll up something similar to OEV network? Try to make it sustainable.
I think first of all, to say like Chainlink doesn't make money is maybe not the correct way. I would say they still, and their operators potentially still make money, because they just roll the cost onto the networks. Like, for instance, on Arbitrum, the Arbitrum Foundation is paying for these feeds, and it might still be that the Chainlink is essentially making some money, but it's essentially in no way, shape, or form is the amounts of projects that are utilizing the feeds tied to the money they make. They just essentially, in most cases, cover their costs. Like, there's a lot of governance posts out there that discuss introducing Chainlink. I can just essentially refer you to those, and you can look at the numbers. They don't make money out of this, which is also one of the core reasons why they expand into so many fields with CCIP and other solutions. And those essentially have the potential of actually creating value. But how you can imagine their price feeds is it's just a mechanism to build the brand and to get attention and eyes onto you. But in the best case, it's a break-even business. And in the worst case, like on mainnet for the past 5 years, it's a losing money business. So yeah.
Last question is in the field of OEV, besides API3, there are other projects where we're kind of doing similar solutions. UMA is doing a solution called OVO. What differentiates API3 from it compared to UMA? What are the advantages?
I think one of the core principles of Oval is it essentially is built on top of Chainlink and on top of Flashbots. So it has two heavy dependencies. What they essentially just do is wrap Chainlink price feeds so you can sell them before they are utilized. Which in effect allows you to do pretty much in a similar way what the OEV network allows you to do. But if I can essentially put it out there, there are three things that you can do with the OEV network, and what Oval does is one of them. It's essentially wrapping Chainlink price feeds and selling the rights to them before they are utilized, which also has the potential of capturing up to 90% or 99% of the value lost due to Chainlink just updating and not realizing what their update actually enables. The core problem is it relies on essentially a lot of centralized points of failure. One of them being it relies on Flashbots, their MEV solution, like I mentioned previously. It's essentially just a server that you hope acts perfectly fine. And then you also trust the Yuma team that their stuff is not breaking. And in the worst case scenario, you still read Chainlink, but for the entire setup to work, essentially, there are a lot of more dependencies. Those dependencies also make it impossible for you to expand this to other networks because Flashbot solution is only available on mainnet. So Oval is only usable on mainnet. It is not usable on any other network. And you also can only auction off when Chainlink updates. So whenever there might be opportunities in the market where you actually want to, like, that you could actually generate additional OEV, Oval can't do that because they have to wait for Chainlink to update in order to be able to sell Chainlink update rights. And this is essentially why I'm saying like this is a third of what we are doing. You can use API3 essentially in a complete package. Like you can use our base feeds and get granularity however you want with the OEV network and get paid for it. And we're currently essentially like this is the part I'm not supposed to talk about so much, but I'll like just essentially what I already hinted at. You can also slap the OEV network on top of essentially potentially other oracles. One solution is we could literally just build Oval, which means that only do an auction when Chainlink updates, otherwise read Chainlink. So this is a carbon copy of Oval, and it's essentially what we could do. But what we could also do is we could essentially use Chainlink, for instance, but get additional granularity through API3. So this is essentially even a step further than Oval, where this is essentially what I would call it's a push base feed with auction gated pull. So you have the security of whatever push oracle you want, but you get granularity through the OEV network. So if you want, these are three different products. Go full API3, go please auction off rights from my current oracle. I don't want any granularity. Or you go use my current oracle, but give me additional granularity. And this works on every chain is the most important part. We don't have a dependency on Chainlink or any other push oracle because you can just use our entire stack and make use of this. You can build it on top of other oracle solutions if you want to, but we're not reliant on, for instance, Flashbots, which means we can expand this wherever we want without any meaningful way, and like without any meaningful effort from our part.
Nice. Some hidden alpha to wrap it up.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for coming up, Uge. It was a pleasure talking to you, and all the best with the future developments.
Pleasure was mine. Thank you for your time.